Hello, this is Paul Drockton with Drockton Radio and also pauldrockton.com, where you can read my articles. And today we are going to report on Robert Greig. As many of you know, since really the beginning of the Hollie Greig situation, I've been reporting on it, and Robert Greig is a good friend of mine who has appeared on my radio show almost weekly. And obviously, this is extremely upsetting to me and to many of those individuals that are friends with Robert. And it appears that Robert Greig has been jailed by the Scottish court simply for exercising his right to freedom of speech. And that there is no other reason behind this. And obviously, this all involves the Hollie Greig case. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Hollie Greig case, you can... I'll go into it and explain it. Hollie was a little girl with Down syndrome who was also mentally retarded. And she was abused, according to her own words, by her father, by her brother, and by other individuals in the city of Aberdeen, Scotland, high-ranking officials in the city of Aberdeen, Scotland. And again, this is in her own words and according to her testimony. And literally the most horrific sexual abuse that it's just too horrific to go into details. And when she got older, she reported the abuse to her mother. Her mother went to the police in Aberdeen. And what ended up happening is, instead of investigating the allegations against the abusers, they went after Hollie Greig's mother, Anne. And they tried to get her committed to an insane asylum. Fortunately, she was able to break away from that and set about on what has turned into a decade-long search for justice for her daughter. Now, I'm going to cover this in the next series of videos, next couple of videos, but right now Robert Greig is sitting in prison because he, as an independent journalist, first started to report on the Hollie Greig situation and then became her advocate. And this is the first time in the history of Scotland where a legal advocate who was advocating for a little girl with Down syndrome that was sexually abused by a pedophile ring has ever been imprisoned for advocacy. And there is no other reason. And it's an outrage. It's an outrage. And I recommend that you take a look at Robert Greig's blog, which is holliedemandsjustice.org, and you can read through the story. But once again, I'm going to cover it here. What Robert discovered is that the police investigate everybody. The police in Aberdeen, Scotland, were investigating everybody that had anything to do with helping Hollie, and yet the perpetrators were able to go free. And this began, first of all, with Hollie's father and with their brother, who she named as abusers. And apparently, Hollie's uncle walked in on this abuse, and what ended up happening is that he was shortly thereafter dispatched via what was made to appear as an auto fire, but many of us suspect was much more than that. What ended up happening is that Hollie did go before the Criminal Compensation Commission in Scotland, and she was awarded £13,500 for a crime that the police refused to investigate because it involved some very high-profile politicians. It involved social workers, it involved the headmaster at a local school, and it involved even those that sat on the bench that she had named. Robert Greig, after hearing about this case, was outraged and became her advocate, and then started to distribute flyers in Hollie's defense, asking for justice in Aberdeen, Scotland. And this is why he was brought to trial, my friends, is for handing out flyers for exercising his right to free speech. Now, in this flyer, he named and shamed the alleged abusers, none of which filed a slander or a libel suit against him, but instead he was arrested for handing out these flyers. He was thrown into prison and harassed repeatedly for the last year until finally they decided to bring him up on charges, and for the simple act of handing out a flyer, which to all appearances is nothing less than the truth. Because once again, I want to point out there have been no libel, there's been no slander, accusations brought against Robert Greig. And trust me, if someone were to go out and put your name on a flyer and name you as a pedophile, you'd be hard-pressed to not file defamation charges if it wasn't true. You'd be crazy not to, because this obviously would destroy your reputation. But this is all about covering up the crimes of a pedophile ring. In Aberdeen, Scotland, with its judges and its police force and its attorneys, have done this before. And if you Google Aberdeen and pedophile, you will see that there have been other instances where pedophiles in Aberdeen, Scotland have gotten off scot-free. Obviously, if you're a parent and you have a child in the city of Aberdeen, Scotland, you should be outraged by this. And really, you should be doing what you can to make sure that Robert Greig gets out of prison now. And trust me, if there's enough of an outrage and if people raise enough of a ruckus, then they have no choice but to release him. Now, this case goes much deeper than what I just explained, and I'm going to do a series of videos explaining the details of the case, with which I'm intimately aware because I've been working with Robert Greig from the beginning and with the groups that have sought justice for Hollie Greig. So we will continue the discussion in the next video, but for right now, please do what you can to advocate for Robert Greig by visiting his website, Hollie Demands Justice. This is Paul Drockton with Drockton Radio and pauldrockton.com, and have a great day.